The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building, and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily. We've got Chris Paul joining us Friday. How you doing, brother?
Good. Good morning, man. Another week in the books.
And there's like a costume change going on, Chris. Normally it's all dark and dreary. You're coming out as Gandalf the White. Little Tolkien reference there. Oh man, how you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Not too bad. Yeah. It's been a fun week, and I don't know, man. I was just telling you in our offline conversation, I thought yesterday's Trump press event in the Oval Office was incredible. I mean, a bunch of stuff that backs up a lot of things that people on Badlands have been saying for quite a long time. But it was also one of those that was really entertaining. Trump was just ripping jokes the entire time, and the people behind him just kept laughing. So it was like the entire thing had its own laugh track. It was like a sitcom.
It's almost like central casting.
Yeah.
Did you see the new nominee for Surgeon General?
I don't know anything about her, but I did see that she is another Fox News character who he specifically pointed out was very good at communicating. So.
Yeah. Yep. We'll get into all that and more. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and talk about our sponsors here. And first up, guys, it's officially a new era for gold and silver. Gold has broken $5,000 an ounce, and silver has surged past $100. In 2025 alone, gold jumped 64%, while silver skyrocketed 150%. And with political and economic uncertainty ahead, 2026 could bring even bigger moves. After such a historic run, a little pullback is normal. Metals move fast, so some consolidation is expected. But top analysts are calling for even higher prices. We've seen the first bank failure of 2026 with regulators shutting down Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago. Could more follow? It's no surprise Americans are pulling money from banks and turning to the proven protection of gold and silver. Big news. Goldco is celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited time bonus. Get up to 10% free gold or silver, plus free storage and a free home safe with a qualifying cash purchase. This offer won't last, so act now. Are we seeing early signs of another 2008 style crisis? Don't wait for the next shoe to drop. Protect your wealth with precious metals, because with uncertain times, gold and silver shine brightest. Visit Badlands Gold today, badlandsgold.com today, for your free 2026 gold and silver kit and bonus buy. Again, that's badlandsgold.com. And Ash and I just started The Creature from Jekyll Island on Badlands Book Club yesterday. And
cool.
Yeah, dude, I'm already like all in. I read that book like I think in high school.
Yeah.
And I think I quit halfway through because it was intimidating, man. It's like a 700-page book.
It's crazy. Yeah, I started it, I don't know, 2013 or something like that.
So we are actually, the book is publicly available online. So we are actually reading the book, and it's fascinating, man. Awesome. And that's, that's going to kind of lay the foundation. Ash and I talked about something yesterday, and it's going to kind of lay some of the foundation for the first series of stories we're going to talk about here. Cool. And you're kind of, I think we're mostly aligned in the same thought process about some of these things. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So cool. Let's also talk about our second sponsor for today, and that is our friends over at Pet Club.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right, Pet Club 24/7, fantastic products. All right, if you have not done so yet, guys, please go ahead and smash that thumbs up, and we will go ahead and get into the stories. And the first story right out the gate, right here, Louisiana v. Calais, starting to see some action here. CNN reporting Louisiana delays U.S. House primaries after Supreme Court ruling, but lets other races go forward. This is interesting, and there's a comment in here from the representative that is about to get ungerrymandered. That's the new term I'm phrasing, by the way. Like when they say Republicans want to gerrymander, I'm calling it ungerrymandering because the absurdity.
That's right. That's important. It's also important to note that the change being made from quote unquote our side is not like the distortion of the system. It is the reversal of the distortion of the system.
Correct. And that's a good point you brought up there. And I always want to put on the kind of the cap that we're going to buy into the whole bipartisan left versus right. We're going to buy into all that for this. I don't think either Chris nor myself really buy into that. I know Chris for sure doesn't buy into that.
Well, it's important to pursue both avenues so that we understand them both, because the story is going to be communicated down the one avenue that people are familiar with. That doesn't mean that's what's actually happening. There's usually a deeper level explanation, and whatever we're getting down that kind of mainstream avenue is going to be manipulated and again distorted, just for people's understanding, but there's probably a bunch of exploitation entered into that system, and we're not going to be totally clear about what it is until we go down the other avenue and figure out what's happening underneath.
Amen. So Louisiana delays U.S. House primaries after Supreme Court ruling, but lets other races go forward. It says here, early voting was scheduled to begin Saturday, and overseas ballots had already gone out. The primaries for other races will still move forward. House races will remain on the May 16th ballot. No votes cast in those races, however, will count, Nancy Landry said in a statement. I mean, do they count anyways?
Well, no, but it's going to be really funny that they're going to say, well, these are the real votes because they ended up this way. And then when we get the official vote later on, those two will probably be compared. I could imagine that story coming out.
Yeah. So yeah, it says House races will remain on ballots. No vote cast will count. Representative Cleo Fields, whose district is at the center of the Supreme Court ungerrymandering, that's the new term, not redistricting, ungerrymandering decision, said that Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry had told him that he anticipated issuing an executive order to suspend the House election and call for a new one. Interesting that we can like all of a sudden do that. Like the governors can all of a sudden do that. We didn't have any of that in 2020, but now all of a sudden the governor can just say, yeah, you know what? We're going to issue a new election here. But anyways, Fields expects a court challenge on the move and says, quote, people have already voted. Early ballots have been submitted, Fields said. I read that this morning, Chris, and I almost shot coffee out my nose. I told you we were texting back and forth over the week about, you know, the Virginia Supreme Court thing. And I don't know if you listened to it or not. I think it was fascinating to hear.
I haven't yet. No.
Oh, bro, it is so good to hear these arguments put on the record, you know, because it's not technically Democrats versus Republicans, conservatives versus liberals. It's not technically that, but it is, right? If you voted yes for the gerrymander in Virginia, you are on the Democratic side. You're the beneficiary of that. You're going to benefit from it, and the other way around. So when I heard Cleo Fields, the Democrat representative that was gerrymandered into the district, which, by the way, the district in Louisiana, it literally takes the left side of the state, the right side of the state, and connects it down the middle with just this thin little line.
Like a barbell.
Pretty much. He is the benefactor, or the beneficiary, the beneficiary of that gerrymander. And now he's saying, well, we can't suspend the election because people have already voted. People have already cast their votes. So let's go back to the Virginia Supreme Court hearing and let's hear what the Democrat side, the appellants, argued about early voting and the chances that you take.
I understand the concern that someone who cast their ballot before something happened might be upset or regret that. And that is a problem that is endemic to early voting. That is a problem that someone accepts by taking advantage of the option of voting early. It's worth pointing out that every single voter in the Commonwealth has the option to cast their ballot on election day. The statutes, which exist all over the country as well and are interpreted in exactly the same manner, provide for the opportunity to participate in the election early. That's why it's called early voting. And indeed, Black's Law Dictionary defines early voting as early participation prior to the election. And so there's a consistent understanding of.
So they're basically arguing in Virginia that if you cast your vote early, oh, well, things can happen between when you cast your ballot and when the election takes place, because apparently the election, according to their arguments there, the election doesn't occur until after every single person is done voting and they start counting the votes. That is the election as they're trying to define it. But it's rich that they're saying, you know, if you cast your vote early, oh, well, that's an option that you're taking. Things could change in the meantime, but then you go down to Louisiana and Representative Cleo Fields is screaming, you can't stop this. People have already cast their votes. People have already voted. He says voted, not cast their votes. People have already voted. Oh, well, you exercise the early option. Shit can happen, right? I love this.
Yeah, it's great. But this is also going to maybe point out something about our legal system, and that if these two things are addressing different parts of precedent, the statements that they make about kind of what we would perceive as objective truths about voting will go in divergent directions because they're going to be based on precedent and whatever else the courts are dealing with in those specific cases. And so the system kind of incorporates the contradiction that you're bringing up as just a normal part of its process, which again is crazy and suggests that there are much deeper problems with the system. You know, he also mentioned Black's Law Dictionary and the definition of early voting. All I could think was, I'm not sure that was in the original edition of Black's Law Dictionary, right?
So we're talking early in 1750.
Right. So we're talking about this, you know, Black's Law is like the standard of what legal terms mean, except that it's also been revised like 20 times. And so again, we have Burning Bright and I talked about this a little last night. I don't know if you've seen No Country for Old Men, But Anton Chigurh, who's like the evil character, he walks around, or he uses this quarter in his pocket. He doesn't always walk around with the same quarter, but he takes a coin out and he flips it, and whether the person can guess heads or tails correctly, that's what determines their fate and whether they live or die. And it's really him deciding, but he's using this kind of symbol of objectivity to suggest that his decision is somehow objective. And that's kind of what we have here. We have the appeal to Black's Law Dictionary as the objective source, but oh yeah, it's been revised so many times that it incorporates new meanings through that relative process. Anyway, that's kind of a little heady for 10 a.m., but we were just talking about it at the end of the night last night.
Well, so, staying with the Louisiana thing, Governor Jeff Landry put this out. Governor Jeff Landry, which he's, I guess, addressing himself in the third person, or his social media handler doesn't realize. But anyways, Landry and Attorney General Liz Muriel issued the following statement, quote, "Yesterday's Supreme Court victory for Louisiana has an immediate consequence for the state. The Supreme Court previously stayed an injunction against the state's enforcement of the current congressional map. By the court's order, however, that stay automatically terminated with yesterday's decision. Accordingly, the state is currently enjoined from carrying out congressional elections under the current map. We are working together with the legislature and the Secretary of State's office to develop a path forward." And that is a very interesting concept. I think we saw, I can't remember which NGO it was, or who it was that came out yesterday and was like, we're suing, or we're briefing to the Supreme Court to try and get them to continue the stay until after the midterm elections. In other words, to stay their ruling until after the midterm elections. Now, I don't think they've accepted this yet. And like Landry says there, as it sits right now, all of these maps are unconstitutional. All of these maps. Now, the Louisiana case obviously specifically deals with Louisiana, but there's gerrymandered maps all over the country. This isn't just exclusive to the Southeast, which they like to point out because we're very racist down here in the Southeast, apparently. But with Landry doing this, what other states can now turn around and say, you know what, this Landry brings up a good point. If we run these maps, this election is in fact unconstitutional. Yep. The Supreme Court has said you cannot have majority minority districts based on race. And so this has to stop.
I think that would probably work retroactively to some of the elections that have already been held, by the way. Yep. And all of this, as we mentioned last week, still rests on the census and the redoing of the census and Donald Trump's memo, I think it was in 2019, to remove illegal aliens from the 2020 census count in order to use for reapportionment. And then that whole battle actually happened during what we kind of refer to as that devolution period between the 2020 election and the fake inauguration of Joe Biden in 2021. The reapportionment based on new census figures that yield population numbers minus illegal aliens, which would be an entirely different congressional map across the board. Biden came in and said, no, we're going to stop that after the federal agencies had already undermined the Trump effort. And then, of course, Trump came in and reversed the Biden thing. So we have that back in process. I think all this stuff is kind of a story layer to explain some of that. Again, I hope that midterms are canceled and that none of this stuff matters. But we're going to have to look at how the constitutionality of these congressional districts works retroactively to elections that have happened before, because it turns out that a lot of that caucus that was standing behind Hakeem Jeffries the other day while he called the Supreme Court illegitimate and said it was Trump's court, a lot of them are elected from unconstitutional and anti-constitutional congressional districts. And all of that relied on precedent that held up for 4 decades until this decision.
Yeah. So here's that truth post that Chris just referenced right there. Hakeem Jeffries just called the Supreme Court of the United States an illegitimate court. This is a low IQ individual who should not be allowed to talk that way about one of the greatest institutions anywhere in the world. He should withdraw the statement immediately. President Donald J. Trump. Look, I'm going to point it out, man. That is a very Interesting comment from President Trump giving some of his criticisms of the court over the last year or so. You know, when the ruling goes his way, it's the best ever. And he's had some pretty bad things to say about the court when the rulings don't go his way. So I love to see that. Like I'd love to see pointing that out. I don't believe the Supreme Court is anywhere near the greatest institution anywhere in the world. I don't think any institution is great. But yeah, I thought that was really funny that, you know, he's just pointing that out there. He's going to melt some brains on the left when they start bringing back all his comments, and Justice Roberts having to come out there and say the president shouldn't be saying things about the court. And yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I just tried to find the Hakeem Jeffries comments. He had like the Congressional Black Caucus behind him talking about how this was going to affect Black representation. And one of the really interesting, I did not read this decision yet, but I did listen to the oral arguments a few months ago. Man, maybe 4 or 5
7 or 8 months ago.
It's been, yeah, I guess that was last fall. August. Okay. All right. So
maybe October.
But the idea being, what's that?
They had 2 arguments on this.
So maybe I'm remembering the one from October. But anyhow, so the idea being in this case that because there is a Black minority population in Louisiana, they deserve a congressional district. Otherwise, they don't have Black representation. But the thing is, if they are a minority everywhere and everyone votes according to race, then the proper way for the results to come out is for them to never have representation. And so they basically take both sides of this argument, whichever part of it works in, conveniently for their current cause. It is ridiculous that we ever embrace the situation in the first place. If it was the way that they say it should be, with people voting for representatives of their race because they want racial representation, the entire map everywhere in the country would be white. It's like nuts that they don't understand, or maybe they do understand the implications of what they're doing. They just think that they've got the control necessary to do it, I guess. One other thing I was going to say is, with this SCOTUS decision that obviously reflects a more constitutional basis, although all of it relies on the 14th Amendment, which in my mind is totally illegitimate. This should be a nullification process of everything that is based on the prior understanding of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Okay. But that's not how it's going to work. We're going to have to see it contested in court, even though it's already on its face unconstitutional. They're going to have to find cases that they can actually challenge to make every part of this fall apart, because the situation as we see it, everything is so wound up that it's impossible to separate.
Yeah, well, I mean, going case by case like that. So what in Section 2, what else is there besides the race-based districting?
I haven't looked at that in a long time. There's one other important aspect that I remember from the arguments, and I'm not recalling it now. But ultimately, all of the Voting Rights Act has to go away because it's based on the 14th Amendment, which also has to go away. Well,
the reason I bring this up is because this was kind of going to like drive the discussion that I wanted to have, and this will probably be more of a discussion show, but last night hold on, let me cover this real quick. Harmeet Dillon, Civil Rights DOJ, says we're on it when Eric Schmidt's calling to redraw the lines. Just pointing that out because we want to see action and all that. I'm just pointing it out. It's not like there's not any immediacy or like make haste and do this right away. But again, to the point earlier, if they do proceed with elections with gerrymandered districts based on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, they're unconstitutional. They are in violation of the Supreme Court's orders. So keep that in mind. But, I wanted to go back yesterday when we were reading The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is all about the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Ash and I started talking about how that kind of 2 or 3 year period right there was one of the most destructive in modern U.S. history. It gave us the Fed. It gave us the 16th Amendment. It gave us the 17th Amendment. It gave us Woodrow Wilson. A lot of shenanigans took place around that specific time. And so now, this morning I was thinking about this, like if we're going to redraw congressional districts for the U.S. House, how similar are the state legislative districts in congruence with the U.S. House districts? And so I started playing around with the machine and asking it, will this ruling affect the state legislatures? And it ultimately should. I'm not saying it will, because the Supreme Court decision was only for the U.S. House races. But when they redraw these maps, most of the time, your congressional district mirrors your state district, mirrors your U.S. district, your federal district. And so I was, I'm asking, and we have, the GOP, the Republicans, and putting hat back on, have 28 legislatures, both chambers, and the Democrats have 18. There's 4 of them that are split. Now, when they take away the gerrymander, how much is that number going to change? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because is there an avenue to actually repeal the 17th Amendment? Because the 17th Amendment, and for those that don't know, that is what takes the election of senators and takes it away from the state legislatures and gives it to the people. And, in a Democrat society, which we're not, we're constitutional Republican. There's a reason that our founding fathers envisioned the 2 chambers of Congress with, one elected by the states, one elected by the people. And we've kind of cast that aside with the 17th Amendment. So now we get to the point where you have a majority of the state legislatures potentially that are controlled by the GOP. When we see this, like the 4 that are split, I would imagine when those districts are ungerrymandered, that's going to jump up. So that brings us to 32, which, 32 you're getting pretty close to ratifying a repeal of an amendment there. You're getting pretty close to three quarters.
Yeah. The only issue I would have with that, and I know that this is kind of annoying, is that A, we have a uniparty, and B, we have fake elections. So, I don't want any of those representatives declaring that we've got new amendments now. Hey guys, we changed your constitution. Oh, well, really?
It's not an amendment. It's a repealing an amendment.
Fair enough. I don't want them to have that power, period, but fair enough. That's an excellent point. The other thing, man, just to go back a second about the discrimination and the rest of it, like this might change a whole lot more about our law when we see how much of it is based on race, and the racial basis is illustrated in disparate impact and disparate outcomes rather than the presence of intentional discrimination. And it's a good point how this is going to affect the rest of the country and that representation. I really wonder what would be possible in a scenario where it was like overwhelming, like 40 states to 10 kind of thing, potentially, or, a 75% majority in Congress. Here's another question, though, in regard to the 17th Amendment. Would you rather have the elites of each state, the political elites, the financial elites, the corporate elites, and the rest of it, choosing for themselves 2 senators if we knew we had real elections in the Congress? Or would we rather continue the illusion of choosing those senators ourselves while still having fake elections? I think that the first one is the original constitutional model, but also would be absolutely much better for the people. We would know our relationship with the systems of power in our state, and then we would have a legitimate body representing our interests in conjunction with their interests.
Well, I think that by giving that power back to the state legislatures, you take a significant amount of money out of the Senate. And what I mean by that is, Senate races now are costing $150 million an election cycle now. Now, granted, that's every 6 years, but still, that's a significant amount of money. And as we all know, any money that is left in the coffers after an unsuccessful run or even a successful run becomes yours, right? If you're successful, it stays in the campaign and you can use it for all sorts of other things. But if you're unsuccessful, here's a check. Take it and go live your life in peace in Tahiti or wherever you want to go. And so I think it takes away a lot of the money in that aspect. It also makes the job less glamorous because the money is out of it. And perhaps, and again, I do depend on all of this on free and fair elections and actually cleaning up the election process. But it also puts more of an interest in your state elections, your state level elections at that point, which I think is extremely important, that people are aware of what their state legislature is doing, especially when it comes to selecting your representation in the federal government. It also takes away, kind of the, the old, if you give a man to fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, because you're now making a Senate that is accountable to people rather than to a state. We already have our accountability. That is through the House of Representatives, allegedly. Again, fair elections, but they're supposed to be the representatives of the people, and the Senate is supposed to represent the state, and those interests are supposed to align. And if they don't align, and when you get to that point, then you can get rid of stupid stuff, which will segue into the next part, like the filibuster. We don't need a filibuster if you have bicameral representation in the federal House where the state has a say and the people have a say. And, people say, well, the state, I don't consent to that. Well, you're consenting right now to a federal government having authority over everything. Yeah. And if you want to go back to where Chris was and have more respect for the 10th Amendment, then this is a way that you can do that by giving the state the voice that our founders intended them to have. Our state was supposed to have an equal voice in our federal government. But then that also, requires the federal government, of course, to, not be the overbearing force it is. I don't know. It's a really interesting conversation.
It really is. And here's another wrinkle to it. I think that you're right. The macro pattern, as far as I can detect it, and I think that this is where we have to be going, and we must demand that we're going there, is for the federal government's power to be decentralized to the states as it was originally intended. And I think that perhaps this is an example of that happening. And I think we saw another one this week with Trump announcing the resumption of trade and the ability to negotiate directly between Kentucky and Scotland. And he announced it as part of the announcement that it was something he did because the king was here. And so you have the old colonial relationship of empire being optically separated, and then this on the whiskey tariffs. So if you want to go through this, we can do that and kind of take a sidebar. And then I want to come back around, though, to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, can we let's hit a sponsor real quick. We have a sponsor here from Rumble. Let me see if I can get this pulled up, and then we'll get into that, because I saw that this morning as well. I thought that was interesting. All right, there we go. Quick question, guys. How much control do you guys actually have over your money right now? Technology has changed everything, and now it's changing how money works. Crypto started as a niche. Now niche, I can never, that's one of those words, but now it's going mainstream. Faster payments, more control, fewer middlemen. This isn't hype. It's just where things are going. And getting started today is easier than you think. That's where Rumble Wallet comes in. With Rumble Wallet, you can buy Bitcoin, you can hold dollar-backed stable coins, you can even own digital gold backed by real gold, all in one place. Setup is simple. It connects with MoonPay, so you can use your debit card, credit card, or bank account and be up and running in just minutes. Start small, $10, $50, $100. It's not about the amount. It's about getting in early and understanding what's coming next. And once you're set up, you can even tip your favorite Rumble creators like ourselves here directly. So do this now. You can scan the QR code, or you can click the link in the description and download Rumble Wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet. You can tap buy, and you're in the game. Take control of your money and get started with Rumble Wallet today. All right. We were talking a lot about, Bitcoin and all that with the creature from Jekyll Island, and but yeah, let's jump into this post here from President Trump. Puts this out yesterday. In honor of the King and Queen of the United Kingdom, who have just left the White House, soon headed back to their wonderful country, I will be removing the tariffs and restrictions on whiskey having to do with Scotland's ability to work with the Commonwealth of Kentucky on whiskey and bourbon, two very important industries within Scotland and Kentucky. People have wanted to do this for a long time, in that there have been great intercountry trade, especially having to do with the wooden barrels used. The King and Queen got me to do something that nobody else was able to do without hardly even asking. A wonderful honor to have them both in the USA. President Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's really something, the country to country trade, the thing that he did for the king and queen without even asking. I thought all of that was really impressive. I thought I was going to be able to find the moment that he discussed it yesterday, but I'm not locating that.
What authority does the king and queen of England have over Scotland?
Well, I mean, listen, man, this is one of those things where you cross into that territory where it's like, if you want to find official documentation online telling you that the relationship is exactly one way and have that be the true representation for the relationship, I think that that's kind of a futile cause. We have, for instance, a proxy state like Ukraine, which we're told, the eastern portion of it is all actually Russia now, but we're still told that's Ukraine and that it might become part of Ukraine again. We are lied to about who's running governments. What's that?
Taiwan and China, same thing
exactly,
there.
Exactly. Yes, we could go down a list of those: the relationship with Israel, the former relationship with Venezuela, and the person that they put forward as president. They've done the same thing in Poland. Poland has a president, but they also, the global media kind of projects to the world that this man, Donald Tusk, who's like the prime minister, is actually the leader of Poland. So we have things like that. I'm more concerned about the optical part of the colonial and empirical relationship potentially being separated or potentially reversing, so that Trump is kind of the lead character in that relationship. I forgot the second part of your question, though.
Just what authority they have over Scotland. I don't think they have.
Oh yeah, this is what else I was going to say. So we are raised to believe that the British monarch has no true authority over the UK, over Canada, etc. But that's not actually true. When a prime minister is quote unquote elected by the people, that prime minister has to go get approved by the monarch. We kind of had that in this very strange display as Queen Elizabeth II was being announced dead. It's impossible to know when she actually died. She took pictures with Liz Truss, who had just been elected as prime minister, 2 days before they announced her death. And it was also interesting that day because they announced her death in the morning and then rescinded that announcement only to officially announce it later in the afternoon. So there's just so many weird things going on all these levels with what the British monarch actually is and represents, the authority that the monarch has. But in the pre-constitutional era, each one of the states was treated as its own nation, and it would set up its own trade deals and control its own commerce. And then that switched over in the constitutional form to the federal government being the only entity that could form these trade treaties. And then the states would just kind of manage the trade at a kind of a level of less authority. The federal government would still be the primary authority. Trump is essentially announcing that Kentucky is doing its own business with Scotland.
Right.
And that reverts to a prior form. I haven't totally nailed this thing down, so I'm just telling people this is what I'm looking at right now and researching right now. I think that I am on the right track here. It may turn out that I am not, because it's hard to get enough information about these things. And I should also spend, I have some more due diligence to do, but I think it's an interesting track that would match that macro pattern of us moving back to a prior constitutional form.
So yeah, to me, the weird part was just, like he's got the king and queen over here, and we're to believe that the king and queen of England are negotiating a deal on behalf of Scotland to deal with Kentucky. And, you're kind of getting to the point that I was thinking in my head, that the United States is allowing Kentucky to deal with Scotland, and the UK as a whole the United Kingdom is allowing Scotland to deal with Kentucky. Also, I don't know what bourbon and scotch have in common, although it does say whiskey, it doesn't say scotch, but Scotland is known for scotch, which is barley, versus bourbon, which is corn. So that's,
but I think they're both considered in the whiskey family, right?
Yeah. But what's the relationship between the two? Like,
Trump said it was barrels.
Well, scotch is made in casks, and they're char. I mean, bourbon is made in barrels too. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, he was talking about barrels yesterday. I don't know ultimately what that's going to be. But to go back to the prior subject, one of the things I keep an eye on, and this is partly just a devolution thing, if the devolution term is real, if Joe Biden was never a real president, and I think there's overwhelming reason to believe at this point, I think Trump is basically saying that. We talked about it on last Friday's show. It's time to start taking that view a little more seriously. And if that view is to be taken seriously, then we have to wonder what in the world the Congress is and was doing under Joe Biden and now again under Donald Trump. The ultimate answer is not very much, but they are showing the country and the world that they are doing everything that they would normally be doing, except for passing a lot of legislation. They hold hearings. They talk about how important it is to get Congress's approval on this or that. And so we have Congress attempting to show how legitimate it is. The ballroom thing came up this week because of the assassination event over the weekend. And so now we have the big push for the ballroom. And all of a sudden, who gets on board? Rand Paul. He says, I'm going to push this ballroom construction through the Congress. We need to get behind President Trump now that this thing has happened. Well, President Trump doesn't need the Congress to do that. And it's already in process. Does anybody believe that the courts are going to stop Trump from following through with the building of the ballroom? It's already happening. So we don't need Rand's approval. So why is it going back to the Congress? And, you mentioned the filibuster before the break. Well, if they got rid of the filibuster, we have the House, we have the Senate. They could just, with the majority and Donald Trump, pass everything. They could fix all of the country's problems and implement the totality of the MAGA agenda if they wanted to. And so now Trump is showing the country, look, the Republicans don't actually want to implement this agenda. And Trump said in his comments yesterday, he said, John Thune is a good man, but he said some of these people just aren't going to come along. They're not going to come along with the Make America Great side. They're not going to come along with the return to the constitutional form side. They are going to continue, as they were the other day, applauding the British monarch, the head of the global empire, at least optically, because that's who they serve. And so Trump said, I told Thune, let's just keep having votes. Let's just keep showing who these people are. Trump basically just stating framings that we've discussed for years now on Badlands, just plainly stating, this is what I'm doing. I'm having John Thune show the country who these people are, because the Republicans don't want to get on board with the MAGA agenda. Otherwise, the entire thing would be passed across the board. So I don't believe the Congress is legitimate. And I believe that that's the push and pull that we're seeing with the SAVE Act and with the filibuster and some of these other issues.
And this is to my point that I was making about the 17th Amendment. But I real quick on the whiskey thing, I did a quick search. Yeah. I went over to Ireland back, I think in 2017, and we went to the Jameson. We went to the Jameson distillery, and they taught us about all this. And now it all just clicked back in my head. So U.S. bourbon has to, by law, be made in barrels, fresh barrels, new barrels. You can't. Somebody in the chat said they use Scotch barrels to make bourbon. It's the opposite. Bourbon barrels are often used to make Scotch. We ship them over to Scotland, and they use the bourbon barrels, the white oak charred barrels, to make Scotch after the bourbon had been aged in them. And there was one other thing that came up on this, and I can't remember what the hell it was. But yeah, by law, bourbon. So that's the relationship there between Kentucky and Scotland. So, and yes, somebody in the chat said it's law that bourbon, a couple people, that bourbon has to be made in Kentucky. It's kind of like champagne in Champagne, France. Otherwise, it's just called. I think they've laxed up on that now. I'm pretty sure that law, like you can make bourbon in other places now besides Kentucky, but I'm pretty sure you guys are right that used to be the status quo. But back to your point, I put this post up yesterday, Chris, and I think that this is pretty telling of this decision here. So the Senate Judiciary Democrats said, this is what the Supreme Court conservative supermajority just enabled. Okay. And again, if you look at the map here and we zoom in on this map, let me move this around a little bit. And you look at this Louisiana district, that's all the way over here on the left. Look at that.
Yeah, that's not a barbell. You're right.
That's not a barbell. That is literally going from the top left of the state to the bottom right of the state.
It's a sash.
And then you look at Mississippi.
Like Miss Louisiana, just across
Mississippi just covers half the state with one Democrat seat. You know, they're like, let's see if we can take every urban population in Mississippi, Jackson, Biloxi, I don't know. No, it can't be Biloxi because that's on the water. But anyways, let's take all of Mississippi and just engulf all of these urban strongholds in order to garner up a Democrat majority to get the seat. Now they do it under the guise of this is majority minority districts, but in reality, we know urban centers typically vote Democrat because that's where elections are most fake and gay, in my opinion. Same thing with Alabama. You got one from the bottom left all the way across the state to the right. This is what gerrymandering is. We are ungerrymandering it. And when you look at the map on the right, this is what it's most likely going to look like after. Okay. And so when you put out, you remember Trump at the Al Smith dinner when he said this country is 75% conservative. Was it the Al Smith dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I put this out. Senate Democrats are mad that people can now see how small they actually are. Wait until the Act Blue money dries up and they realize how broke they are too. And what did we just see? The woman is it Maine? The woman that was running for governor? And
Janet Mills, yeah.
Janet Mills just dropped out of the race because she doesn't have money. She's the incumbent.
Yeah.
She doesn't have money.
Do you remember she was at the White House and Trump was like slamming her in a governor's event? I don't know, 6 months ago or something.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she made herself a national figure like that. And by the way, there's, the whole she part of it is, I guess, up for question. So we are told. Man, the gerrymandering, I think it's a really stark contrast there. And it's very easy to see like what they really are doing and have been doing for a long time. And so once you declare that you can make districts like that to create Black representation, we should ask, like, wait a second. So you're saying that Black representatives are going to specifically represent the Black people in all these cases? They're going to prioritize those people in their districts? Well, that has a policy impact on everybody else, doesn't it? And then the other thing is they're essentially saying the people that we put in office from these places could not have gotten elected without our systemic control. They are going in to support certain issues, and you're going to be told that they support those issues on the basis of race, and them supporting it makes it the not racist issue. So unless you're racist, you have to go along with them. And we've been treated to decades of that.
Yep.
That is that has distorted our politics in insane ways.
Yep. So again, just going back to my point, when we actually are able to consolidate this map the way that it should be in compact districts as was intended, not these big, curly cues that are meant to encompass, large urban areas into one district in order to get a representative out of a state that would otherwise be blood red. When we get rid of that, and when we do it in the Democrat, states as well, because there are blue states that do this in order to thwart any conservative representation, right? They start sucking up all of it's like in the reverse. Instead of encompassing major metropolitan areas, they expand their borders out so that these small suburban areas have no representation. They get lumped in with Chicago or lumped in with, Detroit or whatever the case might be. When we get to that point, we start drawing the state maps in more effect. You're right. We could have 40 states with GOP legislators. And then if we're able to actually get elections cleaned up, which I hope we are, this is a huge step in doing that, by the way. This is the facade that is our elections. This is what we're actually voting for. So that is an important step in this. If we get to that point, man, imagine what happens when we have people that are in office. We can pick people in primaries that actually understand the foundation of our Constitution and how off base we've gone. I mean, I'm very hopeful. This is like a 10-year plan. It's not something that's going to happen in the next, 1 or 2 elections, but we got to start moving in that direction to do things like repeal the 17th Amendment, repeal the 16th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, which was, unconstitutionally passed, as you mentioned. Dude, I'm pretty optimistic, man.
We don't actually have to repeal those amendments. If the country understood that all of them were already nullities because of the fact that they are anti-constitutional and that they are improperly ratified, we could just move on. That's like a real thing, especially if elections are real. And, again, the representation thing, maybe the Republicans would win 40 states. Maybe they would win 50 states. But you know what definitely would? People that oppose both of those parties. And that is the direction things are headed. And so if you like abstaining from supporting either side of the uniparty is the path forward. That is where Americans unite. And that is where ultimately the power center is in any sort of legitimate people's government. And now I don't know that a legitimate people's government is going to be possible. Okay. I can't make that happen by myself. Donald Trump can't make it happen. The Congress can't make it happen. The people have to make it happen. And it has to be an overwhelming majority of the people doing it so that we all know, everybody else knows this is the direction we're going. That's the only way to create that kind of mandate. And that means that we must be seriously honest about what the country is actually doing and not worry that the Democrats might defeat the Republicans in the fake midterms. And from the other side, they have to stop worrying that the Republicans might defeat the Democrats. It's not like it's just our side that has to be open to that path ahead. The other side has to figure that out too, that the political parties, we are fine to let ours go. And a lot of people from that side are fine to let the Democrat Party go. They want a different option. The problem is that the system is presenting itself under the branding of that new option. And if everybody chooses that, we're just right back to the uniparty.
Yeah. And the one thing that's going to be difficult to overcome if we do rise to the level where we get the free and fair elections, we clean them up, we get rid of the black box voting machines and everything else like that, with these ungerrymandered districts now in place, if we don't do them, like those two things need to happen, boom, 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 right away, like with each other. If they don't, what do you have now is you have a series where you have incumbents, and it's extremely difficult to overthrow an incumbent. And so you have people that are going to go into primaries with clean elections and with ungerrymandered districts. They're going to say the right things. They're going to continue to win those elections. And then they're going to go off and do the things that, once we, kind of go about our daily lives and forget about what's going on in politics, they go about their normal thing. Yeah. I am very optimistic.
Me too.
Again, long term on this.
And again, this is one of those things where people are like, you're dooming about elections. I'm not dooming about anything. I am telling you, there is a better path ahead, and we can get down that path as soon as we realize that that one is a dead end. But instead, everybody wants to walk down and actually see for themselves that the bridge is really out, rather than understanding the dead end. By the way, I get it, but it's also like, hey, if you want to do that, trust me, it's a dead end. Go down and see it as fast as you can, and then we'll be headed this way, catch up. And that's all good. If people need more convincing, that's fine. But the rest of us don't have to stay behind and just kind of wait at that cliff and be like, hey, you see, it turns out the bridge is out. The dead end sign wasn't kidding. We need to all go back the other way. We don't need for everybody to reach the dead end before we start heading in the right direction.
And before we move on to the next segment, and it's kind of in line with this, but to your knowledge, has anybody ever challenged the validity of the 14th Amendment?
Man, to my knowledge, no, but my knowledge on that would not be comprehensive in any way. I mean, I can ask the machine right now. You can read some of the stuff about how the amendments were forced through after the Civil War. People, governments, governments were replaced in states. They put their own governments there, people that would ratify the amendments. This was basically done at the tip of a bayonet. So we got a real problem here, especially with the fact that the 14th Amendment inverts the Constitution, and people don't realize that their Constitution has been inverted. It's not that the Constitution has problems. It's that they took the Constitution, then they took the opposite of the Constitution. They laid the opposite onto the Constitution, and now they just call the whole thing the Constitution while only working with the opposite layer.
Yeah, and the coup was completed with the creature of Jekyll Island. The Federal Reserve was the completion of that coup, where you inverted the system, where the federal government was dependent on states, and with the creation of the Federal Reserve, the opposite happened, and the 16th Amendment. The opposite happened, and the states became dependent on the federal government because the federal government had unlimited resources because they could just print money at will. And that was all done through the Federal Reserve. It was a prolonged thing, but you're right. It started with the Reconstruction. It started with, the passage of the 13th, 14th, and so forth and so on. But yeah, man. All right. We got to move on.
Brian, if we are indebted to that enemy over time, and we have kind of figured out a new form of government and pushed the enemy aside, they build back over time. And I'd say the 14th Amendment was like the major blow. And then we get through what you're talking about in the Creature Jekyll Island period, the institution of the Federal Reserve, the institution of the income tax. And then I would say that one other major piece of that is the civil rights era and how that essentially redefined slavery, making us all slaves under the guise of none of us being slaves.
Yep. So on that note, just real quick, a mention here, just the news. Rand Paul introduces amendment to end birthright citizenship. I thought that was pretty funny. It's dead on arrival. Go ahead.
I mean, that is exactly the sort of thing I was just pointing out. Okay. It's already being pushed through. We don't need Rand Paul's last minute credit taking bill.
Well, so Rand Paul's only point here is, and he, by the way, Rand Paul has introduced this amendment for the last 15 years. This isn't anything new with Rand Paul. First time he introduced it was back in 2011. And so it's not like he's taking credit. He says, and I'll read what he says in his post. He says, we are a country whose borders have been too open and our generosity exploited too often. President Trump has moved to seal our border from illegal immigrants more than any other president, but we will have to do more. We need to make sure that only children born to legal residents of the U.S. are automatically citizens. Now, of course, this is going to be, nobody's going to ratify this. It's not going to move any farther. This was, kind of a backup in case SCOTUS does not rule in favor of the Trump administration. I just wanted to point out Rand Paul, he has been doing this for a while. I'm still not a fan of Rand Paul's late actions over the last probably year or so, but he had some nice things to say about Trump. So maybe he's ready to stop being the bad cop in this whole thing.
Didn't his fellow Kentuckian, is it Kentuckian? I think it's Kentuckian.
Thomas Massey.
Kentuckian. Yeah. The commercial that he posted earlier in the week where he is on board. He's talking about how much he and Donald Trump have in common. And he basically just lists all of the Con Inc. priorities. They're not all exclusively Con Inc. priorities. I just mean that they are specifically the pet issues of Con Inc. where they align with Trump so that they can signal their allegiance, even though there is not a sign of real allegiance there.
You talking about Massey?
Yeah, Massey's campaign ad that he put out this week. Did you see that?
No, can you pull that up? Because I would love
to find it quicker on Twitter just by looking up Massey ad, because I think it went fairly viral.
And it was
I mean, I saw it through channels that I get stuff from, and so
let me share my thing right here.
Like you could probably find
not that. Is it this one with the elephant?
That's it.
All right, let's play this. I have not seen this.
So there's no sense in trying to avoid it. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. I agree with President Trump a whole lot more than I disagree with him. The list is long. The Save America Act to require proof of citizenship to vote, stopping immigrant welfare, fighting the woke agenda, defending the Second Amendment, protecting the life of the unborn, securing the border. I'm Thomas Massey, and I approve this message because President Trump and I have a whole lot more to get done together.
That's interesting.
I mean, those are the most like simplistic boilerplate GOP establishment issues. Yeah. And he's trying to say, I'm going to help Trump on all these things. Well, even if he was going to help Trump on all those things, Trump doesn't actually need his help. Any generic Republican would have to get behind those issues. And I'm more concerned with the other things where he does not align with Trump.
It's interesting because I might potentially owe Alpha a steak dinner, because Massey, if you're putting out that ad, you're getting nervous. If you're trying to, me and Alpha,
about his primary, you mean?
We have a bet. I think Massey wins. I don't think this guy can beat Massey, even with Trump's endorsement. The other guy, I don't know his name, the Navy SEAL or Green Beret or whatever it is. I don't think he can beat Massey. But if Massey's putting that ad, maybe he's getting a little bit nervous there. But you're right. Those are the kitchen table topics. I think any conservative out there would agree with those. Any not conservative, any quote unquote Republican would agree with those. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in office. Massey's libertarian views. There's a lot more, and I could have this discussion all day about Thomas Massey, and he's one of the few congressmen that I have a lot of respect for, and I understand the feud right now with him and Trump, and I think a lot of it's fake, but
yeah,
I don't know.
You might be totally right about that. I don't dismiss that possibility. I just note that Massey was a DeSantis simp in 2022 and was part of that little online unit of DeSantis simps. Now, maybe they were all running a red team op against Trump to kind of thwart the primary process and make all the other primary candidates look bad. I am totally open to that. All I know is what I saw, and what I saw was people like Thomas Massey, Harmeet Dillon, and others following bot and troll accounts that would attack anyone who was posting against Ron DeSantis. Like I watched that happen. So the idea that I'm going to trust these people, there's just no chance in the world.
Massey and DeSantis were pretty close when they were both in Congress together. And, I think that's why, ultimately, I think that whole thing was an op. There's no way. There's no way it wasn't.
Yes, it's definitely an op, but we don't know where that op is coming from exactly. I mean, we can look at the net effects of it, and the net effects were that the entire Republican establishment looked ridiculous for having to get up on those primary stages, and it legitimized the process of the 2024 fake election, which somehow Donald Trump had to run and win. So there were definitely advantages to all of that happening. I don't deny that. I just don't see why we would give anyone the benefit of the doubt at this stage until we know. Because at the end of the day, all we're asking is that people tell the truth as well as they know it. They don't lie to us. They don't psyop us. If it turns out they all psyoped us for a really good reason, we can apologize to them at the end and say, hey, thank you for taking the slings and arrows on our behalf, including when they're from us. It's entirely acceptable to say that. What's not acceptable is to just assume that the people who are pretending to hold power in an illegitimate government and are lying to our faces are just doing it for a good reason.
Well, you mentioned earlier, that the kind of culmination of all the ungerrymandering and everything that we need to see is when we get to that final point, instead of it being 40 Republican states, how about just realizing that nobody likes either party and that we need to move on from the two-party, the bipartisan system. So let me show this or lay this out. We've seen the fracturing of the Democrat Party through this ungerrymandering thing is a huge one. This one is going to have devastating effects to that party. To the point where they might never have a majority in the House for the foreseeable future. Given that they're going to lose probably 24 to 28 seats. Then on top of that, you have the Act Blue getting absolutely crushed, the expose on Act Blue. So Donald Trump's administration right now is taking the torch to the Democrat Party. Well, what else has he done? He's taken the torch to the Republican Party. Yes. Now he can't outwardly say, hey, Republicans, we're going to crush you. We're going to go after win red for your campaign. So what does he do? DeSantis comes out and runs in the 2024 primaries and fractures MAGA in that regard, fractures the Republican Party in that regard. Then it continues on. And now we were just talking about this on the band reunion this week, earlier this week. MAGA is fracturing right now. And you're having the people that are going with the establishment kind of, tactics. And then others that are like, hey, this is not America first. This is not make America great again. You're seeing a major divide within the Republican Party. And it started, in my opinion, with DeSantis running in the primary. And so this is just a continuation. By the way, DeSantis is coming out now and saying, hey, Trump, give me a job. Give me a job.
Yeah. CNN is pumping him up on their front page today. Really interesting article about DeSantis's prospects, talking about how he has done all of these super pro-Republican things. The one thing that is really kind of a tell for me, and again, I could be reading this wrong, but and a lot of people in the audience will be on DeSantis' side on this, but I don't want to see any AI regulation. I don't want to see the government have an opportunity to influence the channels of communication in any way. I don't want that, okay? Except to keep them totally open. So I'm not interested in the state working with the tech companies to decide how they can curtail what AI is able to do, because there is necessarily a moral perspective and a practical perspective behind that. There are things that the state will want, that the big tech companies will want. There are things, there are like issues. For instance, if they all decided, you know what, we're going to need to make sure that AIs can't put out anything anti-Semitic, okay? And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch more things get redefined to become anti-Semitic under the terms of that law, well, then they have a pretty all-encompassing tool to enact pretty widespread censorship across the entire population who uses AI. So it's like regulating capitalism. Once you begin regulating free markets, it's not the free market anymore. Okay. It's like once you start amending the Constitution and layering statutes over, it's not the Constitution anymore. The system was set up, intricate systems are set up to produce certain outcomes. If you fiddle with those systems and make it so that they don't produce the outcomes they would naturally produce, well, you've just introduced a control mechanism into a system that you are saying is going to be free functioning. Well, it's not free functioning anymore once you've started regulating it. And I would never trust any of these people to implement the proper regulations. And I don't think the system needs regulating. By the way, Elon Musk, I don't think really thinks the system needs regulating. I just read some quote by him yesterday talking about how it is those regulations. It's the manipulation where the system is programmed to lie about certain things that make the entire thing ultimately collapse. So I don't want any of that.
All right, let's continue moving here. This has been more of a discussional show, which I'm fine with. It was a relatively slow news day, so that's kind of a good thing that we get.
I always ruin your rundown.
No. I told you that this was going to be a discussion here. Like, and I think these are discussions that need to be had. I wish we would have had some of this stuff before GART in Nashville. But we'll have it for Deadwood. So I think, these are going to be good conversations for there. And speaking of that, it's a good opportunity now to talk about GART Deadwood. June 25th through the 28th, Badlands Media is heading back to Deadwood, South Dakota for the 12th stop on the Great American Restoration Tour, the third stop in Deadwood, third annual. Mm-hmm. Look at that, man. Third annual GART Deadwood. Whether you're attending in person or virtually, a GART veteran or a virgin, there's something for everyone. Early bird prices for virtual tickets are available through May 15th. Merch packages are also available now for both in-person or virtual ticket holders. Get your GART 12 tickets today at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And Deadwood's the big one, man. Deadwood is the big one. A lot of fun in Deadwood. We're going to be right smack dab in the middle of that 250th birthday celebration period. So I think that's going to be a super fun reason to be there this summer. I'm really looking forward to that. Yes, Mount Rushmore is going to be doing the 250th celebration. I think it's all June and all of July.
Oh wow.
So you will get to see, check the schedule. It might just be on weekends. I don't think it's every single night, but make sure you check the schedule. But they're going to be doing it those 2 months, so you will get to see, if you go to Rushmore, you will get to see the unveiling of Trump. No, I mean the 250th celebration.
Man, if that happened, that would be so funny.
Imagine that on July 4th, they announced President Trump going to be up there. There's a couple things that would have to happen before then, but yeah. All right, let's jump into.
Things can totally happen, man. We are in a very rapidly accelerating narrative period right now. And he just said the other day that Ukraine and Israel will probably wrap up at the same time. What? I love that. I mean, I love that stuff because that's the sort of thing that I would be like, yeah, of course they're going to wrap up at the same time. That's kind of one of those culminating events where you can give a piece of information that has been held back, and that piece like unlocks what actually happened across the board. And so, I mean, this is my hopium, but yeah, we'll see.
All right, let's hit another sponsor and then we'll get back into the news, and we'll probably get back into more like news kind of stuff. But all right, guys, quick word about one of the most important documentaries that you'll watch this year. It's called The Fall of Minneapolis, produced by Alpha News and award-winning journalist Liz Collin. This film blows the lid off what really happened with George Floyd, the trial, the media lies, the police body cam footage they never showed you, and how innocent the city was, burned while good cops were thrown under the bus. It's already been watched over 10 million times and praised by the late Charlie Kirk, Megyn Kelly, Jack Posobiec, Dinesh D'Souza, Tim Pool, and many others who care about truth and justice. The best part, it's 100% free right now. No subscription, no paywall. Go watch The Fall of Minneapolis at thefallofminneapolis.com, or just search for it on Rumble. And if this film opens your eyes like it has for millions of others, consider a 100% tax-deductible donation at alphanews.org so they can wake up even more Americans. You deserve the real story. Watch it tonight. All right. That actually is a really good documentary. Have you seen that? The Fall of Minneapolis?
I have not, no.
It's really, really good. A lot of stuff that, I didn't even realize about that thing there. It's the George Floyd thing. So, all right. GOP lawmakers pushed the full filibuster reform reconciliation to ram bills through the Senate. I feel like we've, kind of alluded to this, circled around it the whole show. Again, they're saying that we need to put this, I think it's Senator Representative Burleson, that's saying we need to, well, let me pull it up just so I can not butcher his quote. He says, quote, "I hope that the Senate will consider taking up reconciliation and doing a comprehensive reconciliation package. And yes, the Save America Act. Of course, you can't just pass policy as budget related. So we're looking to do that. Reconciliation is a procedural move, advanced budget." And this isn't a quote anymore. This is from JTN. "Reconciliation is a procedural maneuver advanced budget-related legislation with a simple majority, bypass the filibuster. The process is subject to the oversight of the Senate parliamentarian. However, she may override specific attempts to include non-budget items in the reconciliation process." You already know. You already know where I'm going with this.
I actually don't. I was just going to say, it sounds like she's like the replay official or something.
The Senate parliamentarian is, and we did a long segment on this like a month ago, because this is how long this story has been dragging on for over a month now. The Senate parliamentarian is selected by the House Majority Leader and serves at the will and the pleasure of the House Majority Leader. Can be replaced at any time by the Senate Majority Leader. Can be replaced at any time by the Senate Majority Leader. Okay, with that in mind, Chris, the current Senate parliamentarian is what's her name here? Elizabeth McDonough.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think Elizabeth McDonough was appointed to the Senate parliamentarian?
You will have to tell me.
2012.
Wow.
So for 14 years, the parliamentarian who serves, who is appointed by the Senate Majority Leader, has been the same person that was appointed by Harry Reid back in 2012. Here's the other thing. The Senate parliamentarian can only offer advice, right? It's not binding. So if the Senate parliamentarian says, you guys can't do this through a Senate reconciliation, all the Senate has to do is say, hey, 50 of us say we can, so piss off. Okay, it's the nuclear option. And so that's all we're seeing here is all these ways that the Senate can actually do something to to effectuate the will of the people, to implement the will of the people through the Save America Act. Trump talks about it all the time, 80+% approval among all Americans, not just Republicans, whatever. And you can nuke the filibuster. No, Thune won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can pass it in a reconciliation bill. Oh, the parliamentarian won't do that. Okay, well, both of those things can be overridden by a simple majority, and you have an 80% of the population that says, yes, fucking do this. And they're like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. Keep delegitimizing yourselves, guys. Keep it up. Keep it up.
I actually do hope they keep it up, because I think that is one of the fastest paths to a solution, which is like Donald Trump's one of his main things that he has done for a decade now is delegitimize our institutions. And I know that we've had some of this conversation before. The institutions are the deep state. Okay. Those are the agencies, the departments, the entities that this global entity has set up in the American government to control the American government over time and implement all of these particular parts of the global agenda. The president is separate from that. The president's administration, the institutions there that outlast presidents, that's the deep state. And still we try to preserve these institutions. Trump is delegitimizing these institutions. We should help him delegitimize the institutions, which is what, I've been recommending for years. But this is the way to do that. You strip them rather than honoring and treating the Congress and all of their special laws and the Supreme Court and all that, and the DOJ and DHS and all of these little agencies with such reverence, we should just be like, all of these layers of the government are illegitimate. If they are going to be kept in power, they must have their power minimized, their budgets minimized, so that all they do is perform the most basic necessary functions to enact the will of the people under their constitutional mandate. And if they don't have a constitutional mandate, they shouldn't exist at all. And then all of a sudden, the government is basically nothing. It all has to be delegitimized. And Trump knows that. Trump's leading that charge. And instead, we're like, no, Trump, we have to protect these institutions, which, by the way, is the same point of view as the Wall Street Journal and Fox News.
Yep. You saw the Rosa DeLauro meltdown with Lee Zeldin from last week?
I didn't. I saw her face come up. I love thinking about how she's actually Perry Farrell. And then after that, I don't watch. But go ahead, please show me.
Well, just briefly, we've played it twice now, but Zeldin goes in there as the head of the EPA, and she's with the budget. What do they call it? Appropriations. She's with appropriations, and so Zeldin's in there negotiating his budget. Right. The problem is he's negotiating a half of the EPA's budget. Trump reduced the budget of the EPA by half for 2027. And DeLauro is freaking out because Zeldin is saying we don't need that budget. And she's calling him a climate denier and arguing to spend that money, essentially. And, Zeldin comes out and is like, do you know Loper Bright? I don't know who the United States, I think. But do you know the Loper Bright decision from SCOTUS? No, I don't know what Loper Bright is, DeLauro says. It could be worth playing. But if you want to pull it up real quick, just search DeLauro and Zeldin. It'll pop right up.
You'll find it faster than me. I'll have to look for it later.
But they're making this is very discussional, guys. If you don't like me and Chris having discussions and you just want us to read headline news, then let me know. But
I don't feel like anybody's been complaining.
I don't think so either. So we'll play this again because I would love to get your take on this. Where is it? Here it is. All right. So again, the context here is that this is appropriations, House appropriations. Zeldin is essentially asking for a lower budget. I mean, saving the taxpayer money, taking away the power of the administrative state. And this is DeLauro.
The budget proposal reads like a climate change denier's manifesto. When climate change.
In other words, you're asking for less money. You need more money to fight climate change.
Yes. And the manifesto word is particularly loaded because it's like what a criminal writes.
Right.
Is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs. How can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper Bright, Supreme Court case. You familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative. If Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because.
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
Let me just.
You're a member of Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden.
I'm very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year. With regards to your question,
you are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now,
let me just pause right there, Chris. Like, just look at this panel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have people up there that look like, they belong there. And then you have this absolute retard arguing to spend more taxpayer money with the purple hair and just looking like what's the one that you always say she looks like?
Perry Farrell.
Perry Farrell.
Jane's Addiction.
Jane's Addiction. Yeah, there you go. You got Perry Farrell, reincarnate and aged about 40 years, arguing for this. This is just hilarious. This is exposure, man.
I think Perry Farrell's lifestyle has aged him an additional 40 years, so he's probably on par. But it is amazing that she doesn't know the pertinent Supreme Court decisions that were major headline cases of the last 5 years.
Yes.
That are directly related to this issue. It is absolutely insane. She has no idea what her role as a congresswoman is. He's saying, Congress didn't tell me to do this thing, so I can't do it. That's what the law says. That's his answer. And she has no idea what he's talking about because she just wants to call him a climate denier. Wow, man, this is a crazy clip.
It really is, because what Chris just articulated right there is exactly right. This ruling directly refers to Congress's authority, and she's in Congress. That would be like an abortion doctor not knowing Dobbs v. Jackson. Like not knowing it, not deciding I'm going to protest against it or whatever. That would be like an abortion doctor, an abortion, murderer saying, I don't know what Dobbs v. Jackson is. Come on in. I can do this.
Well, or like someone who's legislating on abortion law, not knowing the important, relevant law and court decisions that say what the law is.
Yeah.
Not that, that's a separate conversation.
It gets better here.
Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
Well, I answered your question,
No, you
and
didn't.
you didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman.
because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny.
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law. I read the Supreme Court cases.
And I would say
no, what you should do for your constituents is actually read statute.
Budget is at real risk.
Read your Supreme Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you care
about science? Now you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
because
science.
you don't know what Loper Bright is. Because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is. Your message to our folks at the EPA is that you want to defund us.
I don't have to listen to this BS.
BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up.
I made up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Woe is right. What are you doing? Why are you helping polluters?
Why are you helping?
We're not going to get any very far by talking on.
All right, it pretty much ends there.
Wow, man!
I can't believe you hadn't seen that.
That is like an emotionally unbalanced child.
Yes,
and that is what these people are. I mean, I used to talk about child brains all the time. They're not operating in reality. That lady is just bonkers.
Yeah, dude.
Like, it's not just stupid. She's like not there. That's like a 10-year-old.
I mean, and again, I think what Zeldin did there is fantastic, because that clip should be played everywhere. That clip should be played on every single campaign ad in Connecticut where she allegedly runs and just willfully gets. But here's the problem, and tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. If you play that clip in Connecticut, there are people in Connecticut that will back her on what she was saying.
Yeah. Virtually any liberal will, because they know that they have to defend their team.
Right.
They'll like instantly come up with reasons why those court cases don't matter, or they will suggest that Zeldin is a hypocrite and doesn't follow other court decisions so that it's even on both sides. I mean, we know what this stuff is. It's so ridiculous at this point.
And then you turn around and you go to that same voter in Connecticut and you say, hey, the ATF is about to deregulate pistol braces because they don't have the authority under the Administrative Procedures Act. And they'll be like, no, they absolutely. That is how fucking retarded this is.
Yeah. Well, again,
and our side does it too, to be fair. The Republicans 100%. Do it too.
Yeah. You have to know the underlying principles, and then you have to apply them. And that's what never happens in these cases.
That's nuts, man. All right, let's get into this post here from President Trump. Anybody running for president or vice president, let's extend that to Congress after watching that clip, should be forced to take a cognitive exam prior to entering the race By doing so, we wouldn't be surprised at people like Barack Hussein Obama or sleepy Joe Biden getting quote unquote elected. Our country would be a much better place. I took the exam 3 times during my quote unquote, and in parentheses, 3 terms as president, and aced it all 3 times. An achievement that even on a single exam, according to the doctors, has rarely been done before. President Donald J. Trump. I love this man so much.
Yeah, I mean, that really is funny. 3 terms as president.
Yep, there it is. During my 3 terms as president.
I mean, for all the Trump trusting that we are told we must do, why do we never trust him about that thing? And if we do trust him about that thing, we should understand we are on a different level here.
Yeah. And like you said yesterday in the press conference from the Oval, he had this to say about the 3 terms. He was in top form yesterday.
I'm up good in Iowa. We're up good everywhere. Unfortunately, I'm not running except you. We're up everywhere, but I'm not running, Peter, unless you say I can.
I'm not running, Peter, unless you say I can.
Yeah, I actually think that that's a rather significant statement. So Peter Doocy is the representation of the mainstream media there, and that's what communicates to the most of the American people. And it's not just that everybody watches Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or one of the legacy networks. It's that the mainstream media also communicates through social media, and that social media is a collection of coordinated messaging operations that is virtually mainstream media, just through a different channel. Donald Trump can do as much as the people's mandate allows him to do. If the people don't understand that Donald Trump can keep being president, well, it's going to be really hard for him to run again. If the networks keep telling people that it is illegal and unconstitutional for him to do that, and that we are still under that constitution, and they do the legal challenges and the counter programming and the rest of it, well, it's going to be really hard for Donald Trump to legitimately present that option to the people. If we get past that, if the media stops kind of conditioning Americans to believe that nonsense, well, then we can move on in the proper direction. But in some sense, I take Donald Trump very seriously at his word there. If the media stopped communicating to the people all this bullshit, we could actually move ahead.
You know, if you think about, and let me play this clip because I want to talk about the Constitution again, and specifically the 22nd. But let's go ahead and play this clip here. This was back in February of this year, talking about the same thing.
In here 1 year, think of it, 1 year, a little bit more than 1 year now. Time flies. Maybe we do one more term. Should we do one more? Do one more term. Well, we're entitled to it because they cheated like hell in the second. We would actually be entitled to it. But think of it, the price of eggs.
All right. So that's think of it. We're actually entitled to it because they cheated like hell. He's out there saying, I served that 3rd term. That was my 3rd term, or this is my 3rd term. That was my 2nd term. FDR did 4 terms. That following that's 22nd Amendment. Now, I mean, obviously Washington only intended, well, he kind of set the precedent with the 2 terms by leaving after his 2nd term when he left. But you can make the argument, and I think I made this case. We talked about this with while we were at GART, that he should be like the 22nd Amendment should be consecutive terms, period. Like there's no other. So even like look at governors, right? DeSantis is termed out in 2026. He's done running for governor in Florida. He can't run again until the next 4 years. Then he can run again. There is no, you're running for governor. You can have 2 terms and that's it. It's no state. I don't think any state has that limit. You just can't have, you have to have a break in between there. So we've had governors here that I think Lawton Chiles maybe, or I think it was Chiles, or was it Rick? Was it not Rick Scott? What's the other one that ran in the Democrat Party that's a retard?
Charlie Crist.
Charlie Crist. I think he might have done it. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, the point is you can have that kind of gap in between. President Trump had that gap. And, the point I made at GART is that, everything that President Trump was able to accomplish in his 1st term was undone. Or at least a lot of it was undone. So we think. And then you see that gap in between there. President Trump needs that solid 8 years in order to effectuate change against a regime that's so deeply rooted that they've had 10, 20, 30 years in order to, kind of fester in the bureaucratic state. And we've never had a Supreme Court case on this. We've never had a ruling on, does the 22nd Amendment, and especially when you factor in the fraud, if you factor in that that Trump actually won the 2020 election, then the only remedy to that, the only relief that he could get is the ability to serve consecutive terms. That's the argument you would make. And so, I think we're going to see a lot more on this. I know we're all kind of slowly waiting on Bannon's plan, and I'll hand it over to you on that.
Yeah, I mean, some of this, again, just like the 2024 election, some of this is about legitimizing what's happening in the minds of the American public, who are still under the sway of the kind of Fox News explanation for all this. The 2020 election never stopped being contested. The idea that we could just install a new leader with the election under contest has always been absolutely crazy. I mean, I can't believe anybody would accept that form, which again is why there shouldn't, and in my mind, there wasn't a 2024 election in the first place. Donald Trump just kept being president because the election of 2020 is not resolved. And so at some point that has to be resolved. And rather than that being resolved directly, the enemy that has had this infiltration and this foothold for so long, as you just described, they're entrenched. They're explaining all this stuff in another way so that we think everything is happening just business as usual. And it's been 6 years of that now. We can see that business is not happening as usual. There must be, therefore, something else going on. And we can pretty much see what that is. We just have to act in correspondence with that thing that's going on rather than the thing we're being told, which is, maybe I don't state that clearly enough sometimes, but that is what I am advocating for. Understanding there is something else going on here. Let's deal with the thing that's going on, because that is going to give us the most leverage and influence about the thing that's happening. And it's also going to allow us to guide our own lives in correspondence with the thing that's really happening, rather than getting consistently rugged by recommitting to the thing that we're being told is happening, but isn't.
And going back to the point that when Trump said, that's up to you, Peter, that's really up to you. And going back to your point and tying this back to the 2020 election, Joe Biden only quote unquote won because the media finally told us that. Otherwise, if the media would have said, yes, Joe Biden, technically they're telling us that Joe Biden has the most votes, which they're the ones that promulgate that information, that disseminate that information, out to the public. They're the ones that said, hey, Joe Biden won, right? On November 12th, when they made the announcement, it was the media that came out and said, we're declaring Joe Biden the winner. You go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and there was a guy named James Collier, and Ash and I covered this on Why We Vote probably 3 or 4 months ago. And this was back in the 90s, and he's been saying it since the 70s, that the media is the arbiter of the election. And he's not saying that as a matter of fact. He's saying that as a matter of propaganda, right? He's saying that as a matter of rhetoric, that they're the ones that say this is what happens. And so when Trump says, Peter, it's up to you. If you want me to, I can't run for a third term unless you tell me I can. So if, he's saying if Fox News comes out and says, yes, you can do this, what's Congress going to do? Congress is going to say, oh, well, you actually can't do this. Well, he's going to say, well, the 2020 election was stolen. And so that. Can you hear me?
I can now. I think I froze or you froze.
We both froze, so it was on my end.
Wow. Okay.
But what if that is the method for which there's an expose about what actually took place in the devolution of our government? Kind of interesting.
I missed like 10 plus seconds of your explanation. Sorry, man.
Well, I was just saying that, if Peter Doocy and the media as a whole collective came out and said that this could happen or that it can't happen, it gets challenged. Yeah. What happens if Trump then shoots back and says, well, hey, Joe Biden wasn't president. The 2020 election was stolen. And I actually devolved all this. And I was pulling the strings behind the scenes. And guess what, motherfuckers? I could do it again. I can do it again so that I get my consecutive 8 years.
Yes. And I would love for that to happen. I think all of us would, because that would be very gratifying for having made the commitment to this point of view for so many years now. But I also think it would be good for the country, because then we can get back to truthful terms in our relationship with the government. Our relationship with the government is already not what we were told it was. If we want to have the relationship that we were told we had, there are things that we need to understand and things that we need to do to get to that point. I believe Donald Trump is helping to get us to that point, but we are unwilling to change our belief set, the way we talk about them, the way we interact with our government, with the companies that we patronize their businesses, with our peers, and how we talk about politics. A lot of that stuff needs to be let go, and people don't seem inclined to let it go.
Yep. All right. We're getting close. I mean, I got some stories left, but after today's conversation, I think these are just headlines at this point. ABC News.
Yeah.
ABC News. Trump nominates radiologist Nicole Saphier, Dr. Nicole Saphier. Is it Saphier or Saphier? Saphier, whatever. As Surgeon General. Trump made the announcement on social media, calling Saphier a star physician, all caps for the star, a star physician who is central casting, who has spent her career guiding women facing breast cancer through their diagnoses and treatment, while tirelessly advocating to increase early cancer detection and prevention. Saphier is the director of the breast imaging at Memorial Sloan Kettering Monmouth in New Jersey, and a regular media contributor on Fox News. Saphier has generally indicated support for vaccines. In a Fox News Digital, Saphier said that the majority of research shows that there is no causal link between the measles, mumps, rubella, MMR vaccine and an increased risk of autism. However, in that same video, Saphier expressed support for a spread out childhood immunization schedule and allowing parents to wait until their child is older before receiving recommended vaccines if they so choose. By the way, those two kind of paragraphs right there are totally contradictory of one another. By saying that in the Fox News, she acknowledges that a majority of research says there's no causal link. Well, what's that?
Causal link.
Causal. Casual. I don't know why I said that. There's no causal link between them. But all she's doing is saying that this is what the research shows. If you asked RFK Jr., what does the research show about vaccines? He would say, well, a majority of the research shows there's no causal link between autism. However, that's not the case. Look at this, and this. But then she goes on to say, some of the same things that RFK Jr. has been saying. And that's, if you are going to vaccinate and inoculate your kids, spread it out. Don't do it when they're so young. Let their bodies adapt and make a conscious decision about whether or not you want to do this. So they're already casting some shade at her. And thought that was kind of funny. She's also criticized the rise of ultra-processed foods in American diets and has supported kids consuming full-fat dairy, such as whole milk. And that's apparently a problem.
Trump, in his statement, I sent it over, it's shared there. He says that she is also an incredible communicator, all in caps, who makes complicated health issues more easily understood by all Americans. And, he could be hiring her to communicate one particular issue to Americans for a few months or a year or whatever it is. But the point is that she is a television character, part of the cast of Fox News, and she is being hired specifically so she can bring certain messaging to the American people, which was my theory of the case when Trump was selecting the administration in November 2024. People got very angry.
Has he called her central casting yet?
I don't know if he has.
I wouldn't be surprised. Then we had a story from the Hill here. Apparently, Trump going back to Louisiana. Apparently, Trump is real mad at Bill Cassidy for just reason and all that, because he stalled the Casey Means appointment. And I thought that the only reason I really thought that was interesting, obviously, we got what's going on in Louisiana right now, and Trump endorsed the opposition to Cassidy, and rightfully so. But Calais Means was there at the psychedelics hearing, and he's the one that came out and was making the comments about the SSRIs and all that stuff. And I just thought that was really interesting. No significance to it whatsoever, but let's keep moving. Again, kind of just headlines at this point. From the Associated Press, Senate bans its own members and staff from betting in prediction markets. Does that include the stock market? Because the stock market is a prediction market. I mean, how is it not a prediction market? Isn't all like investment predictions? You're predicting that it's going to go up. It's kind of stupid. The measure passed unanimously by voice vote, and it was written as a change to the Senate's rules, so it will go into effect immediately. So there's no law behind this. Quote, United States senators have no business engaging in speculative activities like prediction markets while collecting a taxpayer-funded paycheck, period, said Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican out of Ohio. Chuck Schumer said the move was a no-brainer. That's one of the rarities right there. You got Schumer agreeing with Republicans. Quote, we must never allow Congress to turn into a casino where members representing the public can gamble on wars or economic crises or elections, Schumer said. That would destroy the very principle of representative government. Now he's concerned about it. Senator Todd Young and the CIA, Alyssa Slotkin, Senator Alyssa Slotkin, not CIA officer, totally not a CIA officer, introduced a bill to ban all federally elected officials and government employees from using their insider information to make prediction market bets. So they are trying to actually pass a law. Now, the problem with this, Chris, what are they going to do? So if I'm a senator, right, and I know something's going to happen, and, whatever the case might be, and I say, I'm not allowed to bet on this. I know it's going to happen, but I'm not allowed to bet on this. Hey, Chris, you might want to make a little wager on this right there. And, if you want to go on vacation in a couple months, I would really like to go to, visit Southern Italy. Let's go to Sicily. And you're buying, you're paying for it all. Like, that's all that's going to happen, man. This is so stupid. So stupid.
It's a tough one. Trump mentioned last week in one of those Oval Office sessions, he was asked about, I think it was a veteran who placed a bet on the Venezuela capture, that story. Right. So, I mean, Trump's response was, it's like Pete Rose. And if he's betting on us winning, I don't have a problem with it. So I wonder how that applies here. I haven't obviously thought through that, but interesting wrinkle, because of course Trump knows that this issue is going to become a front and center issue for the American people. It certainly is, with the amount of sports betting that goes on. Like, there are people who are a little bit younger than me and even a little bit younger than you, like kind of that like late millennial, early Zoomer, who are just on the phone all day with the dopamine delivery system has moved from like Instagram and Twitter to Kalshi and Polymarket and FanDuel. And they're just like betting on everything all day long, trying to make that like how they just live free and clear. It's nuts.
So the U.S. soldier thing, and to Trump's point about Pete Rose, is he only betted on wins, right? Yeah. And on his team winning. If he bet on his team losing, that is an outcome that you can make happen. A coach, a manager for a team can put a guy with an ERA of 9, right? There's all sorts of things that he can do. To win, the bad guy has a say in that, right? And tying this into the military thing. And so when this guy went out there and made the bet that they were going to capture Maduro within a certain amount of time, sure, he may have known that was going to happen. Is that an edge? Yes, it's absolutely an edge, because he knows that the action is going to take place. But he's betting on the outcome of said action. I think everybody kind of had the idea that we were going to do something in Venezuela at some point. Now, did he have insider information? Perhaps. But he's still betting that they're going to be successful in accomplishing this. And, as a military guy myself, if you would have asked me, what are the odds that we're going to go in there and use SEAL Team 6, DevGru, Delta, all these other assets, the discombobulator, all these assets to go in there and capture Maduro, I would have been like, yeah, probably not. And that's thinking outside of our Badlands, because I 100% agree that, maybe not 99% agree that he was extracted, not captured. But going with the normie mind thought, thought process, I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, should he have to maybe give back the money? Sure. Is he going to go to prison for it? I don't think he should go to prison for it, but Congress is infinitely worse. Good.
I just wonder if there's any way to stop it.
That's my point, is you'll just do it through third parties and then you launder the money, and they're excellent at laundering money. And so then
And so then what are we getting here with this action from Schumer and some of these other representatives? They are giving us a performance of something utterly meaningless that is designed to convince us that they are not insider trading.
It's virtue signaling. They're
I think it's even a little worse than that, though, because they are telling us, hey, there's this problem that you guys know about, but don't worry, we've fixed that problem. That problem's not going to happen anymore. And so that's what gets communicated to the American people. A lot of American people will see the headline and be like, okay, good. Well, the Senate's not insider trading anymore. That's good. Well, that's not what we were just told. We were just told that they put in a non-binding rule into the Senate rules that doesn't constitute a law, and there's no accountability for it.
Well, and again, the problem then becomes, how do you manage this whatsoever? And this goes back to, a conversation I had with Ash earlier this week when we found out about the Fauci expose and the Dr. Moran's, and hiding him being indicted and all the stuff, the FOIA stuff that he was hiding. And I made the point then that the only way you're going to be able to prevent accountability and transparency through freedom of information and whatnot, and destroying those records, is when it is caught, it has to have the harshest of penalties. And so, I said on Wednesday, I said that if you catch a government official destroying, evidence, you subverting the transparency to the people, using personal emails instead of .gov emails to conduct government business. If you find that, whatever charge you're facing, automatically 5 years added to it or 10 years added to it. Make it harsh. It needs to be harsh. These people need to fear the people. The people, the power lies with us. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing should be done for insider trading like this, stock trading. Any time that you're caught doing something like that, there needs to be an immediate force multiplier on your sentence. So if you're, the courts decide, hey, your insider trading really wasn't that bad. You did it, but it really wasn't that bad. You only made $20,000. Automatic 5 years in prison. Automatic. Mm-hmm. Even if the court says you just got to hand it back. You need to put the fear of God into these people to make sure that if they get caught, they are treated as fucking criminals. Because what they're doing, the crimes that they are committing, are not just, oh, this guy deleted some FOIA. No, this guy obfuscated information from 300 allegedly million people. That is a more significant crime. The deletion did not just stop the deleting of that email and information from getting out. 330 charges added to that. So I know I'm being a little bit dramatic, but I think it's where we got to go. That's the only way to clean it up.
Well, let's also think about what insider information is. It's the government doing things that the people don't know about that influence parts of our society, corporate interests, financial interests. And we are always left behind the curve on that. They're not serving their constituents if we don't have the same information they have, So, and we can talk about the point of representation or whatever. And there are bigger philosophical conversations to be had there. But how much insider information does the government need? And how much do they need to keep it quiet from us? And the fact that they do keep it quiet from us, which is what they're protecting here, their ability to keep it quiet from us. Like how much does that negatively affect the American people? How much does that say about the legitimacy of the government in the first place?
Well, did you see the Ron Johnson, the COVID subcommittee hearing earlier this week, the report that they put out, and then they had a hearing?
No.
Let me see if I could pull this up right here.
Isn't it crazy that we're still doing COVID?
It is, but it's crazy that we're just now getting to the point where some of this COVID stuff is
being officialized by the government,
right? Being officialized. And I don't have it up. I was actually going to cover it yesterday, but ran out of time, and I didn't think we'd have time today. So I was going to cover it on my show tomorrow. But basically, there was a woman that, was talking about these safety signals, these things that were popping up in the testing on the vaccines. And she was ultimately told, shut up about this. We implemented a new algorithm that is going to mask these safety signals so that people don't know about it, and then gave her a cease and desist from talking about it and all this other stuff. And so they literally covered up the idea that they knew that the COVID vaccine was 55 times more dangerous than the flu vaccine. And that, people are dying, people are getting cardiac arrhythmias, myocarditis, all of this stuff they knew. And they used, and Oracle's involved in this. Oracle is the one that allegedly put out the algorithm manipulation. I'm speaking off the top of my head. Here, let me see. I you know what I did? Because I watched Ron Johnson's hearings, and then I uploaded the report into Chat GPT, and I asked it for a summary, so I can do that because I can recall that. And here it is. I'll just pull this up because I think this is important, and I plan on reading the report. I just don't have the opportunity on these shows. For research for one of these shows. The report argues that the Biden-era federal health officials failed to act on early COVID-19 vaccine safety signals, ignored or suppressed improved detection methods, restricted internal access to safety data. FDA scientist Dr. Anna Svarman, working with statistician Dr. William Dumichel, used a new data mining method. This method corrected for, quote unquote, masking a flaw in the FDA standard system. It resulted in uncovering dozens of previously hidden safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, myocardial infarction, Bell's palsy, blood clots and embolisms, and dementia. I mean, it was literally fucking covering this up. And she's like, hey, there's a problem in the system here. And officials were warned repeatedly but didn't act. It says Svarman presented the findings multiple times from March 2021 through September 2021. Officials acknowledged the signals but did not warn the public or pause distribution. Example, a myocarditis signal in young people was recognized internally, and the public warning came months later. Svarman was told to, quote unquote, hold off on further analysis and eventually ordered to cease and desist. They changed leadership because of that. So, it's something definitely worth looking at. And again, there needs to be accountability for that. This is a crime against the entirety of humanity because this vaccine went global, right? It wasn't just isolated to the United States. So that's all I got.
More shoes to drop with the COVID unwinding.
I know. It's almost like we were ahead of this right off the rip.
It's just so crazy that it's still happening and that we're still, this stuff is still being portrayed to us as breaking news.
I know. Yep. Well, I mean, it's confirmation. The news itself isn't breaking. All of this stuff, we've been talking about this for 5 years now, almost going on 6 years now, and it's like now we get confirmation. It's like, oh, you guys believe it now. Just like people had said, like the vaccine's not safe. Well, we told you that when the vaccine came out, that you're fundamentally brain dead if you would put this untested thing in your body, this experimental untested thing in your body. That's all you should have needed to know. Not, needing all of the stuff that we're looking at now, that we're getting now, just shows how like you have no sovereignty. You have no individualism. You have no critical thinking skills. If you couldn't put that together back then, well, I had to for my job, then find another job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyways, let's jump into this story real quick because I wanted to cover this one with you. Hunter Biden's ex-lawyer ordered to pay $50,000 to former Trump aide after harassment claims crumble. Kevin Morris, an attorney notoriously dubbed as Hunter Biden's sugar brother, is to pay $50,000 to Garrett Ziegler and Marco Polo, the conservative nonprofit group he founded, to cover legal expenses. This ends a protracted dispute over whether Ziegler impersonated a Democratic strategist to pry sensitive information out of Morris about the Hunter Biden laptop during a conversation over the phone in 2022. Jennifer Holliday, Ziegler's attorney, said the judgment doesn't even begin to make up for 3 years of the legal battles. Holliday is asking the Supreme Court to evaluate California's anti-SLAPP law, arguing that the state's protections for free speech actually only worsened the case by prolonging what she believes were weak accusations. And then it adds this in: a person familiar with Morris's case called the conclusion a formality and downplayed the Supreme Court filing is unlikely to receive review. Ziegler's representation had requested as much as $300,000 to conclude the case. Morris's legal battle with Ziegler began when Morris picked up the phone and spoke with someone whom he thought was a Democratic operative about the laptop back in 2022. But when, after the call, he received an image depicting a squid and the phrase, "nothing is beyond our reach," and the words, "Marco Polo," Morris realized his mistake. Morris concluded the caller must have been Ziegler. Morris accused Ziegler of harassment, criminal impersonation, false light, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The case soured when he failed to establish a connection between his phone call and Ziegler. Quote, "There was no phone number that was ever presented to the Court of Appeal, or to me in discovery anywhere," Ziegler's attorney, Jennifer Holliday, said. Morris is the one responsible for all the bullshit that Hunter pulled over the last couple of years, Ziegler said, referring to funding Morris repeatedly given the younger Biden for his legal services, including paying his rent, buying his art, and lending him his private jet, among other things. Morris donated $29,000 to Eric Swalwell weeks before his campaign collapsed. Now, I know you have a bit of a friendship with Ziegler, and I don't know how familiar you are with all this, but what's your take on that situation?
I just hope they keep plowing ahead. I hope it goes to SCOTUS and they get to argue that in front of the Supreme Court. Obviously, the entire time, this has all been such a shit show. And Garrett Ziegler is absolutely tenacious in his pursuit of the criminal Biden family. And they have tried to stop him at every turn. And it seems like they didn't win on this one, which is a good sign and a good trend. And I hope it continues.
Amen. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into rants. I apologize. We don't have enough time for calls today because we got into it.
Yeah. We blabbed.
Shannon MR. Shannon is now a monthly supporter. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Great way to support everybody here at Badlands. I think it's like $5 a month. It's like a cup of coffee. You're buying a cup of coffee every morning for the folks at Badlands. Think of it that way. And, with all the people we have here, man, imagine the things we could do if like 25% of our followers, listeners were monthly supporters. Thank you guys. We appreciate that. CK Felt, if anyone is in East Tennessee this weekend, come support my small cookie business at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival in Townsend, please. Katie's Cookies.
There you go.
Delicious.
And smart advertising there, Katie's Cookies.
Yeah, and you're going to need to send us some for reading that, because
that's right. Yes,
our advertising budget is more than $2, but we do accept cookies as payment. So good luck with that, Katie. EC was here, rated the stream. I didn't know that shows up on this now, but apparently it does. So EC was here, rated the stream. Good to see you, brother. G-Man 1156 just got done listening to last night's sit rep. Awesome show, CannCon. Yeah, that was a fun show, man. I spent like an hour after the show on talking to Danny. One of my brothers I served with wrote a book, and I read the book. It's fantastic. It's about our deployment. And we had him on last night to talk about it. And at the very end of the show, he's like, "Hey, if you go to this website, you can see all the pictures from the deployment." I'm like, "Danny, how'd you not tell me that before the show that you have the website? Because we could have been going through pictures and all this." There's a ton of pictures of me as little baby Lupo, 24-year-old, 25-year-old Lupo with no beard, but I did have a mustache, sweet stash.
Nice. Dude, have him on your channel and just do
I am.
Send it, yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys want it, rumble.com/CannCon, shameless plug. I'll have him on again very soon to go over and just tell war stories, man. So thank you, G-Man. Appreciate that. Lee Walden, morning, fellas. I'm still on the rug regarding Article 5 Convention of States. What gives us standing is it's in the Constitution.
Yeah, I get it. People want to operate within the system and create solutions. I don't question your motivations. I don't think that is going to be an effective tactic. And there is not a collection of people that I think we could find from any of these states who should be trusted to carry out that responsibility. Certainly not right now, at least. I mean, if we knew that was going to happen in a year and we had time to vet people and think about who really should be representing the people's interests in that process, maybe that's a different scenario. But like if we just said, hey, there's going to be an Article 5 convention on July 4th, for instance, let's decide who needs to go represent everybody, or let's send our congressmen who are currently in office. Just a big fat no to all that.
Just send Badlands, bro. Just send us. I would be totally cool with that. We have so much friction amongst us. We have so much disagreement and back and forth and critical thinking. Let's just send, all of us, man. I'm okay with that.
Well, somebody has to represent like the side of the people with an understanding of the nation that ignores the political parties, because everybody's just going to be vying for partisan advantage in a process like that, figuring out how the people they serve can be served by the process. And unless I know that those representatives are directly serving the American people and representing the American people's own interests to the system of power, rather than just saying, I'm doing this all on behalf of the people. Here's my opinions for the system of power. Unless that's the scenario, yeah, forget it.
I don't know. I feel like we have enough. Back and forth in Badlands that I'm not saying like we literally should do this. I am not, I think I'm off the convention of states wagon fully after the Virginia thing, what they did with the special session there and rug pulling the people in Virginia by lying about what they were going to do in the special session and then amending their constitution. I don't think we can let a convention of states to go forward until there's some way to figure that out. And people will say, oh, they're going to put guardrails in place. No, they're not. They put guardrails in place for the Constitutional Convention, and they said, fuck your guardrails. And they said, we're going to throw the Articles of Confederation out and make a constitution.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not there. So anyways, let's get back into the rants. We're going to go over time. Doc from Amish, PA. Have a great weekend, lads. You too, Doc. Emerald Dragon, good to see you. 14th seriously needs to be challenged. I'd argue that Brandon Joe Williams would be the one to do it. Okay. I don't know. Who's Brandon Joe Williams?
I'm not familiar.
Shoot me a DM, Emerald. Emerald Dragon. Also, hey guys, hope all is well. Hey, S2G 109. Thank you, Chris and Brian. This show is full of amazing constitutional information and can help educate the people. Thank you. Appreciate that. AK Lou 9. Great show as always. Love Friday mornings and hearing both of your perspectives. Have a great weekend. Off to your Kentucky bourbon in a barrel, I guess. Off to have a Kentucky bourbon in a barrel, I guess. Yes. Has to be a new barrel. First round, Bain Jr. and fourth round, Keontae Scott out of Miami and drafted by my Buccaneers, Baconeers at CannCon. What's your take? NFL ready? Sports news. You will have to tune into Y Chromes as we'll talk about the draft on Y Chromes on Monday. We don't have time here. Also, we're going to do, I'm sure we're going to talk quite a bit about the draft. And I'm terribly sorry about your Penguins. Shit happens.
Yeah. It's always just sad when your team loses in the Stanley Cup playoffs because you want to watch so much more playoff hockey with that kind of, with the feeling of those stakes. It's like I wasn't that excited about sports in, 7-8 years at least. And it was kind of like a fun little escape to be watching hockey this season.
Yeah, I'm rooting for all of your teams. I'm rooting for the Wild. I'm rooting for the Avs. I'm rooting for. I was rooting for the Penguins. I'm rooting for the Bruins, and I'm rooting for Tampa. So I've got everybody but Canada, but I'm rooting for all of you guys because my back-to-back Stanley Cup champ and 3-time Stanley Cup appearance team is not in the playoffs, and so I have nothing.
Yeah.
Lonely in the corner, guys.
They'll be back next year.
All right. Chris, what do you got coming up, brother?
I'll be on DPH with John tomorrow night, and hopefully I will have a piece of writing out this weekend about the discombobulator and about controlled opposition.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that piece.
Be good, yeah.
So I've got my show tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., doing a weekend review. There's a lot I did not get to cover today, so I will be covering that. I'll start with that stuff tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on my channel. Also tonight, since there's kind of a gap now with Why We Vote not being on Fridays anymore, and there's nothing to fill it in. So before Spellbreakers, Christy and I are going to do date night again. We're going to bring that show back. And so if you want to just hang out, sip some wine and make fun of cringe 80 music videos and play fun games with my wife and I, we have a lot of fun doing it, just shooting the shit. So if you guys want to check that out, we'll be doing that probably either 7 or 7:30. Haven't made a final decision yet. before Spellbreakers here on Badlands. And then, of course, Only Lands at 10 p.m. So tune in. And yeah, thanks, Chris. I thought today was a good show, man. I needed that. Yeah. Little hopium injection. So
yeah. Well, I mean, dude, there's a lot of things to be hopeful about, and there's an opportunity to make some really positive change in this country. And I hope that people really jump on that rather than allowing fear to guide them into a recommitment to the system that Donald Trump is trying to take apart.
Amen. All right, guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you guys later.
I don't say this lightly. This lotion changes people.
My knuckles would actually start to crack. Started using the soft disclosure lotion, and I am very impressed. Even within just a few days, I've noticed a tremendous difference.
That's not a script. That's what happens when something actually works.
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, that line keeps coming up. Because when you don't use it, your skin starts acting up.
Every single ingredient in soft disclosure is intentionally chosen. There's no filler ingredients. It is not like this BS product where they have a bunch of ingredients. Every ingredient listed is for a purpose.
Over 65-star reviews for the lotion alone. Not influencers, not actors, just people whose skin finally shut up. Soft disclosure lotion. Once you try it, you'll understand why people won't stop talking about it. Visit softdisclosure.com and use code BADLANDS and get 10% off.